Darren, tell us your story.
Cool. I got into the biz about 30 years ago. It started when I was skiing one night, and I'm zipping down the course like I normally do, and a tree jumped out right in front of me, and I almost crashed right into it. So got down to the bottom of the hill and calmed down, and I realized that my peripheral vision was instead of being out to the side like it should be, was pinched in by about 30 degrees. So I went to see my doc, and we found out we had a tumor affecting my optic nerve. So went in with surgery to get that. In the process, my optic nerve was damaged completely, and I lost my sight. So I had to learn how to do things a little bit differently.
And this was sudden for you. You didn't really have time to prepare.
Exactly. It went from pretty much 20/20 vision to no vision.
So you were working in finance?
Right. I was in the finance biz back then. And so now, all of a sudden, none of the tools that I use in that biz were accessible or usable by me anymore. For example, the Wall Street Journal. I could get it in Braille, but it came a week late, and it was a stack of Braille about this big that was hard to search and hard to get through and all that. So not so great. So I decided to change careers, and I went from the finance biz into the tech biz. And I was very lucky throughout my career. I was able to work in a lot of different places. I worked at West Virginia University and helped create a more accessible environment there. I worked with American Foundation for the Blind in the tech world, worked for Yahoo. And with those companies, I was able to work with nearly every Silicon Valley company out there. That was really cool to be able to affect change with all of those companies. And fast forward to today, now there's a lot of great tech available out there for me that we want you to learn about so that you can help build tools that allow people with disabilities to thrive.
So the tech, when you got started, there was low-tech stuff or just nothing?
There was some low-tech stuff, canes, and there was some technology built for blind people. It just wasn't very good at that point.
Clunky?
Clunky, that's a good word for it.
Yeah, and definitely not equitable, so you weren't able to do things at the same pace that your colleagues were.
Correct, I wasn't able to compete, and that's not going to work too well.
So what did you do at Yahoo? So we know that there are engineering teams that are driven to, they have success metrics, they have to get the product out. And they didn't know anything about accessibility. So can you tell us what you guys did to start introducing accessibility to these engineering students?
Right. At that point, we really had to be evangelists as much as we were techies. I had to have my tech skills to have my street cred when I was talking to these engineers, but I had to get on their radar screen. So one thing that was nice, we required all new engineers to come into our accessibility lab on their very first day and get about a 1-hour overview just to get the idea, to get them aware of it. And then any techniques after that, I invited them in afterwards. I invited their product managers in for trainings. I also would go walk around campus and find any stand-up meeting and just walk right into it and try to be bold and say, hey, how you doing? Remember me? Let's talk. Yeah, if you guys thinking about accessibility, just to get them to, just to see me and think about it, right? Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we would work very intensely with teams to really solve a bunch of problems that they had, right? I would evaluate certain products and find some pretty serious issues, grab the teams and sit down and fix it. And that was a great way for them to learn about it because it's hands-on. It's a lot about what we're trying to do here with the AFB Talent Lab.
So that's interesting. So you were pulled in to solve a bunch of problems, right? So you were there to solve basic problems, or like where did you think the teams were, and was there progression over time that
Absolutely, yeah, very good point, because in the beginning I was doing the basic stuff, simple things like labeling a button that says submit with submit and not green dot GIF or whatever was labeled. Simple things like labeling graphics so that it didn't just say graphic to me, it said picture of several people working on an app, whatever that image was. Other simple things like labeling form fields. Something as basic, almost anywhere you start with a website or an app, you got to log in or start an account or whatever. So those forms, just as simple as making those forms accessible. So in the beginning, it was really basic. I had to get all that low-hanging fruit. And then as we progressed, those engineers would cover that. And in a perfect world, I'm able to just focus on the really cool stuff. So, right, so for a finance app, let's make that line graph talk or sing to a blind person. Let me access that. And so let me work on things that are more difficult and let the engineers do all the basic stuff.
Awesome. So just for a point of clarification, when we're talking about technology, you've mentioned apps and websites and stuff. That's pretty much what we're talking about now, right?
Right.
Okay. So everybody's got an app. Everybody's got a website.
Exactly.
So this is something that every company deals with.
Exactly. It's not just for people in the tech field. It's not just for designers and engineers. Think of Joe Professor. He has not got trained in any of this, and he's affecting the lives of kids directly. So what he posts on his class curriculum needs to be accessible to me. Startups that really can't afford to hire an accessibility professional like me, they need to be able to learn this and be able to do it in a way that's economical.
So you worked at a Silicon Valley company, so obviously your engineers were top notch. So is this something that was difficult for them?
No, it's not. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's straightforward. And a good engineer, you just really kind of have to nudge them in the right direction, and they will do the research and find out a lot of things. And of course, I'm right there to train them, answer questions, work on the hard things. But really, once they got interested, and that's hard too, right? You've got to make the point, make it something that they want to do because they weren't taught about this in college. But really, overall, once you get them going, it wasn't that hard.
And of course, there's competing priorities, right?
True. Think about that. You've got timelines. You've got things like privacy and security. You've got monetary concerns. You also, you don't want to spend a year on a product because that's really expensive for engineers to do that. So there are certain priorities, and I need to make accessibility a priority, or I needed to make them think accessibility is a priority.
But once an engineer knew the basics, did you find that to be a major burden to build in accessibility? Or did it become easier, like something you can just do without really having all of that overhead?
Yeah, it came a lot easier because in the beginning, I had to evaluate an app head to toe, left to right, top to bottom. And there were so many issues. Fast forward a year or two in that process, and it would take maybe an hour or so to glance through and find the main things, find maybe 3 or 4 things we need to work on. Or say a bright new designer or engineer came up with some very innovative thing that no one had really figured out how to make accessible yet. That was fun for me to come in. And that's where some of the more difficult things happen. But once they learned the basic, it was so much easier to make a 100% accessible app without spending a lot of time and money.
Yeah, and then you can start pushing the envelope and actually making technology better for people.
Yes, you're right. Raising that bar beyond just can I use it, but can I use it and enjoy it and efficiently compete with my colleagues?
So we're here talking about the Talent Lab, Darren. So obviously you weren't able to fix all of this in Silicon Valley. We're still going. So what are some of the main problems that we have as far as sustainability goes with accessibility?
Well, number one is that it's just not taught in the colleges, right? So we get engineers that are great engineers, but they're very raw when it comes to to accessibility and inclusion. So the first thing is we need to, and these are problems that the Talent Lab wants to solve, getting this into the process, getting it ingrained so they get all that low-hanging fruit, and I don't have to be involved until we get to that higher bar.
Awesome. Well, so we need to see some of the stuff that you use, Darren. So we're going to head back to the house and take us on a tour of some of the stuff that you use.
Cool.